Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Parker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to the VRRC, and it's the penultimate round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. We're getting down to the part of the season that I really enjoy the most, where points start to become more and more important, with only 4 races left to decide a champion. And after what happened a week ago, we've seen the championship table really tighten up at the top, with the top 3 drivers covered by just 12 points. It's going to be another nail-biter, as always seems to be the case here at the VRRC. Andy McEwan talking to you from the commentary box, joined not by Jack Oliphant, because he's in Birmingham of all places, so thoughts and wishes to him. Lewis Edwards is with us instead in the commentary box, the super sub, as always, on standby. And Lewis, great to have you here. Obviously, you're a second appearance in the box, I think, this season, but you're always busy watching the races. You are usually just producing our wonderful broadcast stream. Now you're doing double duty, but it means that you have seen everything we have, and I know have enjoyed the season just as much as we have too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a cracking season, and as you said, we've got the top 3 well within 12 points now, and in the practice server, we've got 7 drivers in just the last hour of practice. 7 drivers covered by a 10th and a half. That's all that separates those at the front. It is going to be a proper night of action.
It absolutely is. Always is when we get to Brands Hatch, in fairness, whether it be on the shorter Indy circuit or the longer Grand Prix circuit that we're using tonight. We always do see some of the closest racing. Normally, when we come to the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, with touring cars especially, we're talking about the final round of the championship. It is the penultimate round. We're finishing things off on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in a week's time. So slightly different dynamic, maybe, to the races. Silverstone, though, is going to be an absolute barnstormer, that is for sure. And it will complete what's been another spectacular 8 weeks of racing that started back in late April at Donington Park. We then headed to Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit for a pair of races before visiting Croft at Alton Park. Snetterton, Thruxton a week ago, which certainly threw up some surprise results. And, well, actually, I say surprise results. It looks like the form some drivers carried through Thruxton is sort of continuing, actually, this week at Brands Hatch, based on those practice times. And as I said, we finish at Silverstone in a week's time. Now, last time out at Thruxton, like I said, a few interesting results were had. It certainly mixed the championship up quite nicely. Kyle Felvers came out as the top scorer across the 2 races at Thruxton, despite the fact he didn't win a race, but he was incredibly consistent, had 2 second place finishes, which is pretty difficult to do given the fact we have the full reverse grid for race 2. The wins were shared in the end by Eric Axelsen, who got remarkably his first win of the season. And then it was a similar story for Jordan Taylor. Jordan Taylor, who only joined in halfway through the season, finally getting on the top step of the podium for the first time. So Axelsen, the second highest point scorer, and Oliver Gibson, third highest point scorer. Gibson, the best of the 2 BMWs, notching up a 5th and a 3rd place finish. Fair to say, though, Lewis, it wasn't necessarily the BMW's week at Thruxton. They'll be looking to bounce back here at Brands Hatch, but Kyle Felvers has been on a bit of a run of late, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's beginning to drag himself up into real championship contention, now up in 2nd place in the championship, as you can see here. Tied on points with Elliot Dalton-Ayres, which is not something I thought we'd be saying a few rounds ago, but Kyle has really got to grips with the car a lot more now, and he's managed to pull out the results, especially in race 2. He seems to be making strides forwards, especially in the first couple of laps, whereas some of the drivers like Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson, being in that BMW, they've got to be a bit careful, as it's very easy to get turned round, as we've unfortunately seen a few times, whereas Kyle in that Honda can be a lot more aggressive, which gains him the places, and that means he can move forward in the race too, which I think is where he's gaining most on his rivals at the moment.
Yeah, realistically, sort of looking at those top 3 now as championship contenders, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, by the way, has the longest podium finishing streak of any driver so far this season. At Alton Park and Snetterton, he was on the podium in both races. Sadly, that got broken at Thruxton last time out. That, I believe, became his drop, and so that's why he still joined second in the championship. Oliver Gibson there in 4th, still just about in contention, as is potentially Scott Bugner, but then Eric Axelsen a bit too far back, in all likelihood now, to get back into contention. But the Vauxhalls look strong. They were quick at Thruxton. They're going well in practice again this week, so don't count he and Josh Martin out for some race wins. Jordan Taylor was never likely to fight for the championship, having missed a couple of rounds, but he's into the top 10 now. Joel Laskin 9th, and Andy Dorman still clinging on to a position within the top 10 in the championship. As always, Lewis, it's not just the points that they're fighting for. Plenty of prizes up for grabs, not only come the end of the season, but round by round as well. Yeah, Jack's usual favourite segment. I'm going to be taking over that for today. Jack, if you're watching, I'm sure we all know that you're missing this segment, but we do have indeed plenty of prizes, as you can see on the screen. In first place, you'll get yourself a very nice large first place trophy, which you can display nicely on your Zoom if you decide to join the call to remind everybody that you won. You'll also get a Cammus direct drive wheelbase, one we have tested at the VRRC Centre in Leighton Buzzard, so we can first-hand verify just how good it is. If you come in second place, you're going to be getting yourself a very nice Aegon 34-inch ultra-wide monitor and a nice, good second place trophy. In third place, you're going to get yourself a Thrustmaster handbrake and shifter combo, so you can either use that as a handbrake or a shifter, depending on what you feel like, maybe a bit of drifting, a bit of rallying. And you'll also get yourself a nice little trophy to go with. In fourth place, you'll win 2 hours of sim practice at the VRRC Centre in Leighton Buzzard. In P5, you'll win 1 hour of sim practice at the VRRC Centre. And then we have a prize draw for those who compete in 7 of the 8 rounds or 8 of the 8 rounds. We have 2 1-hour sim practice sessions at VRRC to give away to any driver that has completed those rounds that didn't already win a prize from the top 5. We also have the Driver of the Round medals and NGK jackets. Last week that went to Sam Zero after a really good race 2 at Thruxton. And then the top scorer hat, which last week went to Kyle Felders, as we saw, will receive an NGK hat. And of course we have the viewer jacket, which will go to one of you lucky viewers in the audience. We've had some nice comments already coming in from plenty of people, and we'll pick one of you at the end of the stream and you'll receive a nice NGK jacket. Big up Dave, who's happy to see me subbing in the commentary box. And that concludes all of the prizes. Now, this is normally the bit where somebody segues to me doing the track guide, but now I'm talking. I'm going to hand over to Andy to hand over back to me. See, you're learning all the time, Lewis, because it is a cardinal sin in TV to throw to yourself. So well done. Impressed with that. Yes, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, a true classic. It's one that I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with. But let's take the high-speed guided tour courtesy of Lewis Edwards. Hello and welcome to Brands Hatch for the penultimate round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship Season 4 on the GP loop this time. Heading into turn 1, down into 4th gear. Use the apex curb for rotation. Power through the corner nicely. You want to brake at this marker board on the left hand side, down into 2nd gear. Hug the apex nicely, get back to the power as soon as you can, using up any exit that you need. Over to the right hand side for a tricky 90-degree left-hander. You're going to brake, get the car rotated early and back to power as quickly as you can. Don't go over the curbs, as that will get you a track cut on the exit there. Tricky long left-hander here. You want to carry good momentum through it, but importantly getting a nice exit onto this big flat-out straight. And we're going to be on the hybrid and looking for a slipstream in qualifying here for certain. We head now down the hill, speed climbing ever more. We're now into the big commitment section, down into 4th gear. Pin the throttle as soon as you can, don't run too wide on the exit there. We're going to stay left. This next right-hander, I don't like to use that curb on the apex, but the front-wheel drive cars might. Back on the hybrid some more. I'm going to have a quick flick to the right-hand side here. And then we're going to power through the corner, not going too wide on the exit there, back over to the right-hand side to open up this left-hander. Use the curb on the apex for rotation, and you can use as much of that exit curb as you want. Now into the final corner, you're going to want to focus on taking a slightly later apex, but importantly getting back to that power as soon as you can, back on the hybrid, and probably a slipstream come qualifying, and that completes a fast-paced lap of Brands Hatch. Well, great stuff there, as always, from Lewis, who was really pushing the limits on that hot lap there around Brands Hatch, as you have to do, though, because it's going to be so tight out there in qualifying. You're going to have to find absolutely every tenth, every hundredth of a second that you can to find your way to the front of the grid. We're into that qualifying session now, nearly 5 minutes into the 15-minute session, and drivers starting now to get themselves up to speed on what is quite an overcast day in the virtual world, and therefore quite low track temperatures for the drivers to deal with. It will take them a couple of laps then to get fully into the groove. Not, however, taking Nicky Taylor long to get right down into the low 1 minute 27s. That is, we believe, quicker than they were doing in practice all week. And it's Nicky Taylor then fastest within the session right now in the Honda. Then the Vauxhall of Eric Axelson second fastest, except that changes now because Carl Felvis goes second. So it's a Honda 1-2, Axelson third, Ethan Hill fourth, but more improvements continuing now to pour in. Elliot Dalton-Ayres was briefly on the front row until Oliver Gibson went fastest in the BMW. So already we're starting to see drivers really pushing the envelope as far as what sort of pace they can reach, and a nice variety of cars there towards the front of the grid as well. We're following Josh Martin now down through Clearways Corner. Josh about to complete his latest effort. He is currently some way down the order. Hasn't really got a fully representative lap in just yet. He is 15th at the moment. Should improve from there, which he does, into 6th position. And this, we're hoping, will be a good night for Josh Martin because he's not had the best of seasons, I think it's fair to say. Did have a definite upturn in pace at Thruxton a week ago. And the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit is somewhere where he has had good results in the past. Josh Martin, would you believe, his last victory on the road, anyway, was right here 2 seasons ago at the final round of our previous Touring Car Championship. He did inherit a win at Monza in the GTV3 Championship last season, but his last win on the road was here on his way to the title that he won later on in the evening. So Lewis, Josh Martin, definitely a driver arriving here knowing that he has what it takes to do well at Brands Hatch. A race win would be a real feel-good story for him.
Absolutely, but unfortunately for Josh, there was a little technique he told me about after the end of the season that he used to get the speed out of the car at Brands Hatch, which won't work in this car. What he did was going into Hawthorne, he would dip a wheel onto the grass on the entry to get a little bit of a slide on to get the extra rotation into the corner, and then he could use that to power through. But with the physics being very different on this pack of touring cars as opposed to the ones in the previous championship touring car wise that we did, I don't think that's going to work. So he's going to have to do it the old-fashioned way without any kind of little tricks up his sleeve, unless he's got something new to surprise us with.
Well, that's interesting then. Didn't know that. So Josh Martin, he took a lot of grass through Hawthorne that time, but a bit too much, and on the exit of the corner, so that was a time disallowed. He's dropped down to 8th now with other people improving, including Jack Smith, the championship leader, who has just stolen pole position away from his teammate. So Jack Smith in a little bit of need of some good results, I think. He's still got this championship lead, but the last couple of weeks have not been the best for him. His results over the last 4 races don't make for the best of reading, really. He had a 13th and a win at Snetterton after getting spun from race 1, had to then fall back upon a race 2 reverse grid race victory. Then at Thruxton, 4th and 7th on a track that I think it's fair to say didn't particularly suit the BMW. So that championship lead has been eroded. He's only 12 now, ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Kyle Felvis, neither of whom, though, are really showing the sort of pace in this qualifying session that I necessarily expected. So Jack Smith will be doubly happy. He's got the pole position, and those 2 closest to him within the championship not right on his heels. Here is Elliot Dalton-Ayres then in the Hyundai, and he sits 5th right now, whilst Carl Felvis, the man with whom he shares that 2nd place in the championship, would at the moment be sharing that 3rd row with him as well.
Yeah, I would have expected them to be a bit closer than 3.5 tenths and 4 and a bit tenths off the leaders at the moment. It's not really very similar to how it was in the Brands Hatch Indy round that we had earlier in the season in the 2nd round. So it seems that the BMW likes the extra little section on the GP loop, which doesn't feature on the Indy circuit, which is the bit we're going through with Elliot at the moment. It likes the high-speed nature of this section, whereas the front-wheel drive cars are not liking it so much. I think they gain a lot in the slower speed, more technical parts of the lap, and the BMWs really get their advantage at the higher speed round the high-speed corners. So it's interesting to see where that plays out, but also the ballast will be different for certain drivers, with people like Elliott and Kyle improving up the championship compared to where they did last time we visited Brands Hatch. They might be carrying a heavier car now as well, which might also be contributing to why they're a slight bit slower than we might expect of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a moving target in some ways, isn't it? Trying to predict the pace that certain cars are going to have on certain tracks. But it is interesting that the BMW 3 Series goes so well on the Grand Prix circuit, because back when the 1 Series was BMW's go-to touring car, it used to really struggle out the back here at Brands Hatch because it was a shorter car, so it didn't have that stability through high speed, whereas now the 3 Series these days is the size of a truck, so it has really good stability through those high-speed corners and actually doesn't negotiate the tight stuff quite in the way that the 1 Series used to. Anyway, Elliott Dalton still continuing to motor along in 5th position. Nicky Taylor and Eric Axelsen at the moment would make up row number 2 of the grid. So again, decent form being shown by those two, but a BMW stranglehold at the front of the field. Can the others find a little bit of an improvement? Well, a decent improvement really. 10th and a half back near enough is Nicky Taylor. Elliott Dalton is pushing hard on this lap though, down through Sterling's. That cambered left-hander runs a little too wide over the grass. That was touch and go as to whether it would have been exceeding track limits. We'll find out in a moment or two whether the lap time registers, but he's got time for another couple of laps as long as he's not taken too much life out of the tyres. Let's get him across the line. Dalton Ayres, does he improve upon 5th position? Answer, no, it's an improvement in time, but he stays on the inside of row 3.
Yeah, he's got a bit closer. He's got himself a tenth of a second further up, but the only concern for Elliott will be the target is also going to be improving, as now Nicky Taylor's gone to the front, only just by a solid 8 milliseconds advantage now over Jack Smith, but that target is going to be moving constantly, so you have to find a way to improve more than other people are improving when you're already on the back foot. That's a real difficulty, and it's one that a champion will have to navigate at some point. So if Elliott wants to make a real fight for this championship, these are the sort of areas where he can make the difference as a driver and see if he can pull a good result out when the car maybe isn't quite as good as it has been at other rounds.
And here's the thing, I mean, he's a quarter of a second off pole position. That is blink of the eye stuff, but we get used to talking about a quarter of a second as if it's quite a significant amount of time. I mean, he's 5th place and he's within a quarter of a second of pole position. It is remarkable how tight this is. Nicky Taylor, though, as Lewis said, up to pole position now, only by 8,000. Notoriously fast starting BMWs as into the pit lane will dive Elliott Dalton Ayres. So Dalton Ayres aborting that run. He might just have time for a quick tyre change to get back out for one more flying lap, but it will only be the one flying lap, and that doesn't give him a huge amount of opportunity to improve, really. He will get back out there again. You can see only a tyre change required, as here Josh Martin down in 8th position makes his way down the hill. His teammate Eric Axelsen has done the impossible. He's managed to slot in between Nicky Taylor and Jack Smith. You would have thought that that was far too small a margin to try and slip into, but Axelsen has jumped onto the front row 5 thousandths of a second, I think that is, away from pole position, as here Josh Martin is backing right off, trying to get some clean air for the start of his next lap. And don't worry, you're not seeing double. That is Josh Martin sat at the wheel, and a very, well, I was going to say a very bored observer, but I actually think that perhaps that he's getting a bit of assistance there from his very good friend. This is not a rallying competition, but I do believe there, Lewis, that Dave is doing his very best Nicky Grist impression.
Yeah, Dave is definitely there helping Josh. I'm not sure what he's reading is exactly pace notes for Brands Hatch, but he's definitely reading Josh a passage of something to maybe give him some extra motivation or inspiration to pull the lap out of nowhere. But it seems to be working. Maybe he's come to supervise Josh so he doesn't make a mess of his races, because he's not usually up as high as 8th in the championship so far. So that's a good start for him, and just a couple of tenths will put him into the top 5.
Yes, absolutely. Being spurred on, I'm sure, with words of encouragement by Dave, which we know is his speciality. And I am trying to see what it is he's reading. I think maybe it's for the best that we don't. Josh Martin, though, down the hill, up into the right-hander at Sheen Curve, and hammers the curb there through the right-hander, trying to improve upon 8th position. And, well, expected maybe a bit more than this out of Josh Martin. He is carrying extra ballast, of course, with having an actual person sat alongside him in the car, although I'm not quite sure how that translates into the sim. Out of Clark Curve he comes then, and across the line he'll have time just about, if he wants it, for one more lap. But how good is that lap? Is it good enough to improve upon 8th place? The answer appears to be no, so we'll have one Vauxhall perhaps on the front row, but it's going to be Josh Martin left with a little bit of work to do. And seemingly here, Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson, no retaliation here against Axelson and Taylor. That surprises me a little, Lewis.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. They're on laps. What we can do, the wonder of being a broadcaster and a commentator, is go on board. If you look at the number to the left of the gear, which is the number in the middle of the dashboard, which you can see is ever so slightly minus, and now it's dead even. So we can see Oliver is dead even with his lap at the moment, so he's going to have to find a small bit of time. And is he going to be able to? He's got a better run through this corner, so he's looking to find time. As long as he can navigate the traffic here. Oh, this is going to be tight. Is Nathan going to be able to get out the way?
Oh.
Yes. Oh, but he's lost out ever so slightly. He's going to be milliseconds off pole. He might be 4th, but it's going to be close.
Across the line, it is an improvement. How close does he get to the pole position? A 127.17 is only 2/100ths away from pole position. The top 4 drivers are covered by less than a 1/4 of a second. That is ridiculous around what is nearly a 90-second lap, and it's 3 different kinds of car represented in that top 4 as well. That is insanely close. And Oliver Gibson, well, even if he wasn't directly held up by that traffic at the final corner, it surely was a little bit of a distraction for him, and it's a full commitment turn over a blind crest as well through clearways. So the tiniest of distractions may have made the difference there, but it was still a valiant effort, and Gibson will have a good chance if he can nail the start of getting into a podium place by the first corner. It'll be Nicky Taylor, though, who we hear from in a moment or two, because we'll have our pole position interview and the start of race 1 in just a few minutes' time. Welcome back, everyone, to the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship here at Brands Hatch, the majestic Grand Prix circuit playing host to the penultimate week of racing in what's been a very intense and exciting season of touring car action. And, well, based on how tight that qualifying session was, there's every chance that it's going to get even more intense and exciting now. One man who's hoping for anything but that, really, is our pole sitter, Nicky Taylor, who for the fourth week in a row, Nicky, joins us for a post-qualifying interview. You've been the king of qualifying so far this season, and so far you seem able to back that up with a race win. So what's the chances of another one of those here tonight?
I don't know, honestly, because these BMWs are ridiculously quick round here, and also they're off the line here, especially with Brands being like uphill and with doing some practice starts like last Thursday. I know for a fact when you start on pole here, it literally just puts you right hand side and right hand down towards the wall. So this is going to be eventful, and if anywhere I could have got pole, I think here would have been the least favourable place. But obviously the points are nice for it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Jack and Ollie come just steaming around my outside. I'll put up a hell of a defence, but I don't think it will end well.
Well, you've got Eric Axelsen alongside you, so you've at least got a little bit of a buffer back to the BMWs. How concerned are you about Eric, though? Because he seems in a good run of form at the moment, too.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Astra has looked quick around here, and when I done testing like before the championship and stuff, the Astra was my quickest front-wheel drive car around here. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's quick, but at the end of the day, front-wheel drive, I think we need to form somewhat of an alliance to keep the BMWs at bay going into T1, but it is what it is, and at the end of the day, I'm not fussed where we come, and I'm just here for fun because the championship's out of the window now. So it is what it is. I'll see where I can come this week. Try and get 2 podiums, but it's going to be hard.
It is tricky, that, isn't it? When the championship's gone and you're a driver we very much expect to see up there fighting for titles, but you can still, I think, take quite something out of winning races, because at this level, with the level of competition we've got on the grid, if you can be coming out top 3 even, that is a genuine achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be tricky for me with missing 2 rounds. I think missing 1 round in a VRRC championship is okay, because obviously you can take it as your drop score as long as all your other rounds are pretty okay, but yeah, missing 2 was always going to be a kicker, and then last week was just solidified from my own doing, solidified me being out of the title race. But yeah, it is what it is, and it means I can have fun for these last 2 races, last 2 rounds, and yeah, just see how it goes.
Excellent stuff. Well, we'll let you go and have a chat with Eric maybe about the plan into turn 1, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again after the race, Nicky.
Hopefully so.
So Nicky Taylor, pole position for, well, technically speaking, the 4th week in a row. Really impressive effort that, by the narrowest of margins, though, Lewis Edwards. What do you think? Because Nicky Taylor, you can never accuse of being overconfident when we talk to him after qualifying. But what do we think? Has he got half a chance of keeping those Beamers behind, or is it kind of a foregone conclusion that one of the rear-wheel drive cars will lead into Paddock Hill Bend?
Well, we can't forget that in the single car series we've ran, there is one driver who always gets a car off the line better than everyone else, and that's Eric Axelsen. So trying to form an alliance with him, I can see why Nicky's trying it, because Eric could as well get a demon start and be past him as well. So he could potentially be 4th into turn 1. But I think as long as he keeps the inside and they can't get fully in front of him, he's got a good chance. And the one thing that plays to his advantage is the front-wheel drives will warm their tyres up better than the rear-wheel drives. So what we'll see, I think, is the front-wheel drives will just have that advantage for the first maybe 3 or 4 laps. Ever so slight advantage after they lose out on the starts, which kind of nicely balances the deficit that they lose off the line. But I think we can see that if Nicky does get past, it may not be the end of the world, because he might be able to make a move stick in those first 4 laps. And I mean, we saw it in the Brands Hatch Indy round, where Scott Bugner managed to pass Oliver Gibson after being behind him into turn 1. He managed to follow him and then make the move in the end of the race and then hold on to the place as well. to get the win. So I think it's going to be exciting. I don't think we fully know how it's going to pan out. There's lots of different factors at play, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it all ends up.
Indeed so, and then obviously the top three in the championship all starting quite close together as well. Jack Smith third, and then Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Carl Felvers fifth and sixth. So that's a sort of subplot in all of this as they try and fight for valuable championship points. And we can't really fully count out the likes of Oliver Gibson from the championship either. So yeah, this could be an interesting race. Strap yourselves in, everyone. 20 minutes on the clock, and the red lights will be going on very, very shortly as we prepare to get the final 4 races of the season underway. Lights out now, away they go, and Nicky Taylor from pole position tries to cover off the BMWs. Here comes Jack Smith up the middle though. He's got past Axelson, I think, but is he going to get around the outside of Taylor? That might be a challenge too far, and the Honda, will it hang on? The BMW right round the outside. Jack Smith with good traction down the hill, but Taylor has got the inside line. No, he hasn't. Smith comes across the nose of the Honda and manages to snatch the lead. So Jack Smith from third on the grid has done it, and now Axelson through into second place, so it's not been a good start at all for Nicky Taylor. That looks as though Carl Felvers is up into fourth place, so Smith gaining ground, but Oliver Gibson down to fifth.
Yeah, it's been a bit chaotic on the start, but Kyle's done in typical Kyle fashion. He's managed to make some places up at the start where it counts. That's going to make his race significantly easier. Are we going to see Nicky and Eric's air quotes alliance going out the window? Yes, we are, but Nicky's just blasted past him with a bit of hybrid usage there, so nothing too much. Jordan Taylor down in ninth. Probably would have expected a slight bit higher from him, given him being a slightly lighter car. But obviously still his first season in VRRC. He's learning all the time. We might tip him to move forward in the race. But Jack has managed to get into the lead. Are we going to see him pull away, or are Nicky and Eric going to be able to follow him?
Well, at the moment, it's the second of those options, isn't it? Because they're definitely sticking with him on this opening lap of the race. Nicky Taylor, though, defending that newly reacquired second place into clearways. It's just going to slow him down slightly on the exit. Smith jumps on the hybrid, so does Felvers. And so down in seventh does Elliot Dalton-Ayres. So Elliot Dalton-Ayres losing 2 places there from where he started. That is not ideal. Axelson peeking to the inside as Dalton-Ayres does the same against Josh Martin and gets one of those spots back. Axelson was wide further up the road, though. And this is a chance for Felvers. Josh Martin on the grass in the background. You don't know where to look here. Martin scoots across in front of Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but massively outbraked himself. Perhaps an adjustment to the pace notes needed for Druid's Corner for later in the race. So that all settles out with Dalton-Ayres into 6th and Felvers now, Lewis, onto the podium.
Yeah, Kyle made the place count again, so now he's looking at the back of his, well, sort of teammate. Teammates in principle, shall we say. They're both under the HFT Racing banner, but with the rules on 2 cars per team in our championships. Nicky is racing under Graves Motorsport with Ethan, and Kyle is racing under HFT Racing with Jordan Taylor, but they play nice with each other, or at least have done in the previous rounds. One thing we did see in the background was I think Joel Lask had a bit of an off going into Paddock Hill Bend. I don't know if that was assisted or he just dipped a wheel onto the grass, but that's dropped him down. You might remember the drama of Joel Lask versus Kyle Felvers in the Brands Hatch Indy round. I don't think that's going to be repeating itself in this race, with Kyle up to 3rd and Joel sadly down in 12th.
Yeah, those two were inseparable the first few weeks of the championship, weren't they? And have since then sort of distanced themselves a little bit in the points because they've not really been spending a lot of time together on track. Eric Axelson plunges down through Paddock Hill Bend and begins the 3rd lap of the race. Jack Smith still not really getting away, given the fact that they've been fighting behind. You would have expected him to build up more than 6/10 of a cushion over Taylor, with Felvers 3rd, Axelson 4th, Gibson 5th, having a quiet race so far and about to come under threat, I suspect, from the Hyundai of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. That is Josh Martin and Jordan Taylor, whilst Ethan Hill and Andy Dorman are running at the back end of the top 10. Lead gap coming down. Both, they've had all of the top 4 on the hybrid. In fact, everyone on the hybrid, unsurprisingly, really, heading down the Pilgrim's Drop Hill into Hawthorne Bend. And when they all use the hybrid like that, really not a huge amount to choose between them. Although somewhere out of that, Taylor still managed to gain some ground. So this phase of the race, Lewis, Taylor looks rapid.
He does at the moment, yeah. So he's obviously not phased. He must have a lot of confidence knowing that Kyle's behind him. He can just focus solely on following Jack and closing that gap down. But Kyle's lost out a little bit here. Eric's beginning to edge closer to him now, and Eric kind of got one over on him at Thruxton. He got passed straight into turn 1, and then Kyle threw the kitchen sink and everything at him, with the help of his teammate Jordan Taylor, and neither of them could get past him. They couldn't even launch a proper attack on him. Just seemed like every time Kyle closed in, Eric had a response. So it'll be interesting to see, now that it's the other way around, how it's going to pan out. Now, in the hybrid situation at the moment, Jack Smith has 11, Nicky Taylor has 10, so Jack's got that little buffer for one defensive manoeuvre. Kyle Felvis has used an extra hybrid. Oh, Nicky's going for the move. That's risky.
Big lunge up the inside there into Surtees, but the traction of the beamer gets Jack Smith out of the tight left-hander ahead. That was the first real attempt, though, from Nicky Taylor, who knows he's got pace and needs to try and use it, just in case that BMW looks after its tyres as well as we expect it to. In the closing stages of the race, he might struggle as the race wears on, Nicky Taylor, to find that opportunity to overtake again. Out wide in the background goes Elliot Dalton-Ayres. He had got himself briefly ahead of Oliver Gibson, but Oliver had taken that place back again before that moment. The Hyundai driver, though, now falls a little bit further away. There is Nicky Taylor. He is a picture of concentration as he turns his way through the left-hander at Sterling's. That Honda working really well. Brands Hatch Grand Prix has always been a good circuit for the Honda Civic. Doesn't matter what kind of touring car it is, what generation of car it is, it's always gone well. But one of the Hondas perhaps about to lose a place because Eric Axelson's got his nose up the inside of Kyle Felvis through clearways. They have the drag race now past the pits. They bang doors as they come past the pits. Indeed, Kyle Felvis trying to close the door. They're side by side for the lead as well. Axelson goes through into third, and Nicky Taylor goes round the outside of Jack Smith to get the lead at Paddock Hill Bend. That should not be possible.
Well, it shouldn't be, but that is what happened. So, yeah, Nicky's made it work very nicely. Oh, Kyle's very sideways there. I managed to get away without taking the track cut, but he has now given up the place to Eric. Oliver Gibson behind is slowly clawing time back as well, so he's obviously feeling a bit happier with the car now. He got shuffled back earlier on, but he's beginning to make his way further forwards in the pack and is on the hybrid looking for a move on Kyle Felvis. He's going to have to go around the outside. This will be brave.
Oh, he's got the speed down the straight, but has he got Nicky Taylor levels of bravery around the outside? In fairness there, Felvis leaves him space and loses the place as a result. So really gentlemanly driving there from Kyle Felvis. But in the end, it allows Gibson through. That is significant, remember. Gibson trying to dig his way properly back into championship contention. And he is into fourth position now, ahead of one of the front runners in the points, and indeed ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres too, so Gibson starting to score rather well out of this race now. Nicky Taylor, though, with move of the season, maybe? I mean, I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times I've seen someone go around the outside at Paddock Hill Bend and make a clean pass, but that's exactly what Nicky Taylor did, and he's starting to scoot away at the front of the field as the battles rage on behind. Josh Martin now starting to close in on, I think here, Lewis, a struggling Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Yeah, well, we say struggling for Elliot. Oh, Josh is navigating. Yeah, definitely needs some needs the pace notes to reflect a slightly earlier braking marker for that corner. Oh, Kyle's not enjoying the balance of the car through Graham Hill Bend there. You can see him getting very sideways in front. But for all the praise we've given Kyle, he's now being reeled in by Elliot, who we said was only in 7th place on lap 1. He's clawing it back very nicely, and Josh Martin's on the offensive, so Dave's obviously helping, and now Elliot's past Kyle.
Wow, on the hybrid, and interestingly, Felvis didn't use the hybrid to defend there, so Dalton-Ayres goes through. Remember, these two are tied for second in the championship right now, so that's of some real significance, even more so if Josh Martin manages to join in and get ahead of the HFT Racing Honda as well. Didn't quite do it there through Westfield, and I think Kyle will be screaming at his teammate here, Jordan Taylor, to try and get involved in this, try and help him out, because Jordan Taylor is closing in on this group. Ethan Hill, who's very much a friend of HFT as well, closing in too, so perhaps the cavalry on its way to rescue Kyle Felvis, but not in time to protect his 5th position as Kyle, well, looking rather less animated than usual, it must be said. Across the line he goes. He is not on the hybrid. Elliot Dalton-Ayres ahead of him is. So Kyle Felvis protecting the hybrid. I can't quite see on my screen, Lewis, how much hybrid use does Kyle have left in this race? Not much, I don't think.
No, protecting it is what we'd expect, but no, he's down to 7 left to go. Elliot's on 6 left to go. Significantly, Oliver Gibson still has 10 hybrid activations to use. So he's done the typical Oliver Gibson trick of not using the hybrid at the start of the race and still not really losing much time from not using it, which gives him plenty to use towards the end of the race. And he fell foul of this in Brands Hatch Indy, where he just couldn't use it effectively. So, they're going side by side now, Kyle and Elliot. Kyle's not impressed.
Well, he wasn't on the grass there. I don't really know what exactly Elliot Dalton-Ayres did wrong. But anyway, Felvis really not happy as he drops down the hill, and he's perhaps letting the red mist descend now. Looks to the outside into Sheen Curve. That's a low percentage move, I think it's fair to say. And he needs to be careful not to open the door here because Josh Martin's with him too. Dalton-Ayres defending the inside line as he is entitled to do. But Kyle Felvis is absolutely furious. Pulls to the outside line now, down into clearways. And this is where Felvis just needs to keep a cool head on his shoulders. Dalton-Ayres is defending the position as you would expect him to, really, and Felvis needs to just be as patient as he can. Meanwhile, Jack Smith has just moved ahead of Eric Axelsen to put one of the BMWs into the top 2. Axelsen, though, is back up the inside of him into Druid's corner as his teammate Josh Martin goes around the outside of an increasingly irritated Kyle Felvis.
Yeah, Kyle got very animated with his car last time at Thruxton. We never actually saw what happened in full, but he told us that a curb started cutting out his engine. So that's what we saw him get very angry about last week. He does like to get reanimated. I wonder if he likes to do it for the show. But I think he's probably quite frustrated that Elliot's trying to defend the place, because being a racing driver, you want to make your way as far forward as possible. I think he's probably a bit frustrated that Elliot's not trying to work with him to try and help catch back up to that front pack of 4, because that's delaying him and pushing him backwards into the cars behind. And when they're in a fight for second place in the championship and the driver in first in the championship is second on the road, they really don't want to be scrapping over 5th place, dragging cars behind them into contention to pass them.
Well, yes, you make a valid point, I suppose, but it is still a motor race, and they are still tied for second in the championship. I think what Elliot was doing there was what most racing drivers would do in that situation. But anyway, Kyle Felvis, I'm sure, having a chance to regroup now, and may yet be able to get back into this. He's going around the outside of Josh Martin now through Paddock Hill Bend, which seems to be the in move to be making today. He can't quite replicate what Nicky Taylor was able to do earlier on, and so stuck behind the Vauxhall Astra for the time being. He's got his teammate Jordan Taylor behind, who we would hope might be a friendly car to have in his mirrors, and so perhaps that might now allow him just to catch his breath. Still a third of the race to go here, so he's got time to get this position back. The lead gap, by the way, suddenly shooting up. Ever since Eric Axelsen lost that second position to Jack Smith, the gap has gone up by, well, about a second, actually, from what it was at the time. So Nicky Taylor looking increasingly comfortable out front. Smith second, Axelsen third, Gibson fourth. Josh Martin has just got himself ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres, according to the timing tower, except he's on the grass. He really is taking this rally driver thing to heart, isn't he? Sticks it round the outside again at Westfield. That's by far the slower line through the corner of Felvis. Gives him a bit of a headbutt on the exit, wriggles through. Jordan Taylor will come by as well. And that there, Lewis, was the risk of trying to go the long way around Westfield. It rarely works well.
Yeah, I think that might have been a move that Dave didn't advise him to do. He's probably saying, Josh, why have you done that? Oh, he's changed his book, so he might have got some overtaking notes out for the race. But he's going to need to switch over to the overtake portion. Well, defend, actually, because Ethan Hill, back from his little holiday, which meant he missed Thruxton, he's back fighting up there in the top 10. And he's going to be looking for a way to pass Josh, who's all over the grass. Definitely taking some more rally driver approach to that, as hard defending from Jordan there. Did not want to give up the inside. And he's managed to keep the place for now. But will we see a move from Josh here? No. He's thinking about it. He's got to be careful because he's got to balance defending from Ethan and attacking Jordan and get that balance right so that he can make the move and then progress forwards. Further up the grid, the gap seems to have stabilised. But Eric Axelsen has been using his hybrid quite a lot. He's down to only 2 left with just under 6 minutes on the clock. And Oliver Gibson has 7 still remaining and is only 9/10 behind.
Indeed so. Oh, here comes Dalton Ayres and Felvers. This is the gift that keeps on giving this battle. Carl Felvers now trying to come back. The Hyundai driver looks around the outside and continues to give his own race commentary as he goes. Elliot Dalton Ayres continues to defend the position, and of course the deeper into the race we get, the more likely he is to do so, because they ain't going to catch the top 4 now. They're 6 seconds adrift of the leading group. Felvers tries the outside, cuts back to the inside. Dalton Ayres jumps on the hybrid though, and that will likely keep the Hyundai driver ahead for the time being. This train though is starting to get more and more congested. Carl Felvers is getting more and more animated, and I'm getting more and more nervous because we've got 5 minutes for this pressure cooker to keep on building an intensity, Lewis. I feel that the lid's going to blow off it at some point before the checkered flag.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to just keep nicely in formation from now until the checkered flag. These two have a bit of history, not with maybe on-track collisions, but Elliot did used to be a part of HFT a while ago, left to join Phoenix Sim Racing. He's kind of a partner with them at the moment. And he's going to be receiving a new Cammus wheelbase, whether he wins it or not, because Stuart has managed to give him one. Stuart Vickers, currently in 21st place for Stuart. He's also trialling something new on the rig. I will find out because he posted about it earlier on social media. They're always looking to make sim racing more accessible to everyone, especially those with disabilities. So we always love to give them a shout out for all the great work they are doing for sim racing as a whole. But it looks like Kyle's dropping back a bit now, but I don't think Jordan's going to be lining up to overtake him. As we saw in Croft when Kyle was on for the win, Jordan sat behind and he could have taken his first VRRC win. So I think when it's over 6th place, I don't think he's going to put up too much of a fight if he didn't when there was a win on the table.
No, exactly. And Carl Felvers perhaps now just starting to remember that there's another race to come. It's a reversed grid. He'll be starting ahead of Elliot Dalton Ayres if he finishes behind him in this one. And the extra couple of points that he'll get for 5th position, maybe not worth it, given the defence that Elliot is putting up here. And perhaps we're going to see him just follow him home. We shall wait and see. That's just starting now to allow that group of cars to space themselves out a little bit more, as indeed is the case between 1st and 2nd. But for the lower placings on the podium, well, something very interesting is happening here, Lewis, because Jack Smith is losing pace and Eric Axelsen and Oliver Gibson are reeling him in. So Axelsen at the moment, the meat in this particular sandwich, the BMWs either side of him proving to be a little bit of a distraction now. Certainly Gibson is, because I actually think that Eric might have the pace to chase after Jack Smith if he wasn't also watching the mirrors so much.
Yes, but I think Jack is managing this. He's got 3 extra hybrids on Eric. So what I think Jack is doing is trying to create a gap to Nicky without dropping in behind Eric or Oliver. And he might be saving those hybrid activations for 1 lap to try and bag the extra 3 points for fastest lap. Given he's quite far behind Nicky, he might have just thought, well, 2nd place and fastest lap is better than missing out on the win and not getting fastest lap. So I just wonder if he's managing it and he's going to try and use all of the hybrid activations on this lap to pull that gap in. He's already found about 4/10 in the first little sector of the lap. And we'll see, he's not going to use one here, but if we come out of the next left-hander and he puts his foot down and presses that hybrid button, I think he might be looking at a fastest lap attempt. But no, he doesn't.
That is interesting then. So not thinking about that too much. Meanwhile, the hybrid is being used here by Oliver Gibson. We know the BMW is good down the straights. Axelsen knows it too. And covers, and interestingly, the hybrid didn't seem to do a lot there, did it really? As far as I could tell, I don't think Eric was using it, and Oliver Gibson just wasn't able to even get alongside, so perhaps just decided to back out of any potential side-by-side exchange, wait for a better opportunity. A better opportunity, though, may not be coming, because we're going to be starting the final lap this time around, and Oliver Gibson really could do with the extra points here. Remember, comes into tonight 4th in the championship, but he is 22 points off the championship leader Jack Smith, who is 2 places ahead of him. Yes, they're teammates, but Gibson would still love to give his teammates a run for his money in the title race, and he needs to try and reduce that margin by the end of the night. On to the final lap we will go. Both BMWs using the hybrid. Axelsen, interestingly not, and does this now give Gibson a chance around the outside? No, and Eric Axelsen, so clever, places the car on the inside to prevent the switchback. So Gibson thinks, okay, I'll go right around the outside. Bang, bang, they touch on the way into the corner at Druids, and that just allows Eric Axelsen to stay in front, but Gibson is going for it.
He is, but Eric is going to be a sitting duck. He's out of hybrid now. So if Oliver just plays his cards right, maybe if he's got a spotter or he's listening to the stream, if he goes on the hybrid and gets a decent exit out of here, I think Eric's got no chance to defend. Because look, yeah, he's on the hybrid. He's only 2 tenths behind at the start of the straight. I think Oliver will be nicely past him by the end of this.
Let's see, looks to the outside, gets the nose ahead, gets the door ahead, gets the whole car ahead, and that was, in the end, pretty easy, wasn't it, for Gibson? So Axelsen with no hybrids left to use, and you can see there, graphically, the difference between the hybrid uses. I suspect then that Eric was using his last one when they hit that part of the circuit a lap ago. So, 2 BMWs up onto the podium, not necessarily in the way that we expected them to be, and they're not going to be, either of them, on the top step, because it's Nicky Taylor who will convert pole position into the race victory. It wasn't quite as simple as that makes it sound. Didn't lead the whole way, but he had pace in the early stages to get the lead back, and pace in the latter stages to disappear up the road. Nicky Taylor, number 1, another race victory from pole position. It's the 4th week in a row that he's managed to achieve that, and Nicky is going to be absolutely ecstatic with that. Jack Smith second, valuable points for the championship leader. He is once again the highest placed of the title contenders, with Gibson next in line, Eric Axelsen 4th, Elliot Dalton-Ayres 5th, ahead of Carl Felder, Jordan Taylor, Ethan Hill, Josh Martin only 9th. He slipped down the order there in the closing stages, and Andy Dorman completing the top 10. The rest of them coming through. Craig Curtis there after a relatively quiet race for him, and the last few will filter across the line. Jack Smith, by the way, did get the fastest lap there at the end, so that's worth bonus points in the championship too, and it all means that that gap that had been decreasing at the top of the championship table will start now to look a little bit more favourable for the points leader. So, race 1 in the books here at Brands Hatch. We get to do that all again in a little while with a full reverse grid, guaranteed drama. Before that, though, we'll be hearing from our podium finishers on the other side of this break. Race 1 at Brands Hatch completed. It means there are just 3 races to go now in the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. A good time then for our championship leader to extend his margin ever so slightly, but not quite able to claim the victory, because it will be, officially speaking, a 3rd win of the season for Nicky Taylor. And Nicky joins us again now in the commentary box. Nicky, well done. You did convert the pole position into the race win, but wasn't fully straightforward. As you anticipated, you had a fight on your hands there in the early stages.
Yeah, Jack's car was just rapid off the line, and I knew my start was going to be shocking. And to be fair, it weren't as bad as what I thought, but because of the way pole position is here, I literally had to lift off my throttle going into T1 because I was just wheel spinning and heading straight for the wall. But yeah, I knew Jack was going to come through, and Eric nearly did as well. So I tried to keep them both at bay. I think I've done a bit more of a better job at keeping Eric at bay than what I did at Jack. But yeah, then just got my head down and tried to do my quali laps against Jack, and yeah, and then he didn't put up too much of a fight when I was around the outside. So yeah, it's quite a good race.
Yeah, pretty good race all round, it has to be said. I think you knew, didn't you, that you had to attack there in the early stages. That's maybe the part of the race where the BMW can be a little weaker. But were you then surprised with the way in which you were able to gap him even in the latter stages? Because that should be when the rear-wheel drive car comes into its own.
I was, yeah, because I used quite a few push parts. Well, what I thought was quite a few push passes to get up to Jack initially, because I was like, I know I've got to get out to him early and got to get past him early, because like I know I can trust my defense here and I can stay in my position. But then once I got past, I kind of just got my head down and went, and he didn't kind of seem to like catch up. So I was quite surprised, but yeah, I wasn't too displeased with him not catching up. So yeah, when I'm quite happy with it, and at the end of the day, I know Jack can race cleanly, even if he comes up like was using push past gain on me, so it's fine.
Now, you won race 1 from pole position at Alton Park. You won race 1 from pole position at Snetterton. On neither of those occasions did you manage to make it into the top 10 in race 2. What are the chances that you can break that trend tonight?
Hopefully we can do that. I managed to do it at Thruxton. But granted, obviously Thruxton. Yeah, we won't talk about the precedents and stuff for me there. But yeah, I managed to do it at Thruxton, and Thruxton, if anything, is harder with the toe and everything. So yeah, I think there's going to be 1 or 2 safety cars. So we'll just have to see how it goes and just pick my way through, and eventually and see where we get by the end of lap 1, and then yeah, just measure my moves.
Good stuff. Nicky, congratulations on that third race victory of the season, and yeah, fingers crossed for that top 10, at least in race 2.
Thank you.
So that is Nicky Taylor, race winner. It's an all BMW affair on the lower steps of the podium, though, and with our championship leader now in second place is Lewis Edwards.
Yeah, Jack, second place after a tough round at Thruxton. You're back.
Yeah, good to be back on the podium. I've done the first races. Snetterton and Thruxton were horrendous for us, so yeah, the car just did not like it at all. And we were like 5th to 8th on a common occasion, so it was nice to be back at the front again. Quality was really, really close, so yeah, and the race proved to be pretty decent. But yeah, happy to be on the podium.
Now in race 2, the BMW is not so favourable with if you have any contact, you might get spun round. What's the plan for surviving and then getting towards the sharp end towards the end?
Well, hoping not for a similar round, similar to Brands Indy, where that was, I think, that might dropped around actually. So we want the opposite of that today. So just want to try and get through cleanly and see how far we can make it up. Maybe get fastest lap at the end for the extra 3 points. That's all I'm really thinking about at the minute.
Well, good luck, Jack. I hope we'll be speaking to you at the end of race 2. And Andy is with our third place driver.
Indeed so. We go now to the other side of the DK Power Racing Garage and speak to Oliver Gibson. Oliver, brilliant fighting drive that from third place. Didn't look like it was going to be a podium for a while, but in what is quickly becoming your style, you were able to sort of dig deep there and work your way up the order. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was good fun actually. When after the first lap, I think I dropped behind Kyle after the first lap, might have been the second lap. I was like, oh, there's podium's gone, it's going to be a 5th place or whatever. And then I decided to go quicker, I guess. Yeah, a lot of fun actually, yeah.
Yeah, those are the races. Sometimes you can just sit back and enjoy, but there is that little bit of pressure, isn't there? Because you're trying to get yourself back into championship contention. Some good points scored there, but I feel maybe race 2 is where your championship might hinge now.
Yeah, I don't have the best track record of race 2s. If you remember Thruxton last week, got a tap, spun round on lap 1. So hopefully, fingers crossed, there isn't any of that. And hopefully there's maybe some carnage in front. Obviously not, trying to put any bad spells on anyone. But fingers crossed for me that I can get through cleanly and get up to that podium position again.
It's going to be a lively one, that's for sure. Oliver, we'll let you go and finish your preparations for that second race. But congratulations on another really hard-earned podium finish.
Thank you.
So they were your podium finishers. Will it be the same drivers that we chat to in 20 or so minutes' time? Unlikely, I would say, but let's wait and see. We've had a few drivers manage to get onto the podium twice in a night, and unsurprisingly, they're the drivers typically that we find at the front of the field, although only once has championship leader Jack Smith managed a double podium. That came at Croft, a track where it's notoriously difficult to overtake, so I wonder what he can do here at Brands Hatch. The grid formed, John Jones on pole, Chris Blakey alongside, with Sam Zero and Paul Laramie together on row 2, and of course those front runners in race 1, and the front runners in the championship digging their way through now from deep in the field. Nicky Taylor will start 20th ahead of the non-finishers, Stuart Vickers and Kenny Press, from that earlier race, with Jack Smith 19th, Oliver Gibson 18th, Axelson 17th, and so on and so forth. The lights then about to come on for the 20-minute reversed grid race here at Brands Hatch. Hold your breath, everyone. Will they all get through Paddock Hill Bend in one piece? And if not, what are the championship ramifications? Lights on, revs start to rise, out they go, and John Jones launches the Toyota from pole position. Pretty even start amongst the front runners, actually. No one getting a massive jump, really. There go the BMWs, already gaining ground further back, but it's Jones who will lead them through paddock for the first time. Chris Blakey in second position, who was out racing in real life at Alton Park at the weekend, along with Paul Laramie, actually, who didn't have a great weekend, and unfortunately, Chris Blakey not having a great time of it into Druids, gets elbowed out of the way there by one of the Fords, and that very same Ford is now pointing the wrong way coming out of Druids. That creates a big stack up down the hill right in front of the championship contenders. Off goes Laramie, so both he and Blakey involved in lap 1 dramas. Eric Axelson scoots up the middle of everybody. Ethan Hill's on the grass further back. A typically boisterous start to the race, but I think by and large there, Lewis, the championship contenders got through unscathed.
Yeah, most notably, Kyle Felthus has dropped behind those drivers he was around in the race. So with slightly less pace, that's going to be tricky. But I think for the most part... No, okay, never mind.
No. Taylor, that is Taylor around, that's Dalton Ayres sideways, one of the Beamers involved too. I think that is Jack Smith, isn't it? So Jack Smith getting massively delayed in all of that, and the race 1 winner, Nicky Taylor. Unfortunately, that trend of race 1 win, race 2 bin has continued again. Dalton Ayres taking a very wild line out of Westfield as well, and loses further places. He's pretty much at the back now, only Taylor and Laramie behind him, but immediately jumps back up the inside of Kenny Press, who closes the door on him, and Elliot Dalton Ayres won't have enjoyed that, and then Sam Zero out wide in front of them as well. It's been a very, very entertaining, perhaps too entertaining first lap for some, but it is going to be John Jones who retains the lead. So John Jones and Chris Blakey and Nathan Smith all kind of retaining their positions towards the front of the field. Smith, though, under threat now from Lee Morgan, who comes through into a podium place. Lee looking for his first podium finish of the season so far. In fact, looking for his first top 5 of the season so far, and good to see those drivers that started at the pointy end of the grid, for the time being at least, Lewis, staying there.
Yeah, it's close racing up and down the grid, but I think one of the trends we've seen in this championship is in the reverse grid races, it seems that the drivers starting at the front of the grid, so those who finished race 1 a bit lower down, have been able to hold on to their positions a lot better than in previous championships. So we've seen results of... Oh, that was Ben Jemison, I think, with a little bit of a lag spike. He didn't just enter the Armco partway down the straight there. But we've seen those drivers who finished lower down in race 1 able to hold on to their positions and get good results by staying out of trouble and just putting in the laps. So I wonder if we're going to see any of the top runners now being able to do that, or will we see those who starred in race 1 able to carve through them?
Well, that is the question. They'll certainly be aiming to, but Brands Hatch a difficult place at which to overtake, although Chris Blakey's trying the Taylor approach of going around the long way, this time through clearways. Didn't really work for him. Joel Lask, a man on the move here, into 4th position there in the blue and black Hyundai. I don't think I've mentioned Joel all night long, but Lask we know goes well round Brands Hatch. We know he's a good touring car driver, and he now senses an opportunity maybe to get a second victory of the season. Hasn't won since the reverse grid race at Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit earlier this season. Out wide goes Chris Blakey. Lee Morgan up alongside him. This could be last opportunity. They bang into each other. Off the road they will both go. Oh no, as Lee Morgan rejoins, he clatters into the side of Lask. Around goes Nathan Smith. It's carnage down at Graham Hill Bend, and unfortunately that took Joel Lask, I think, out of that leading pack as well. Lee Morgan and Nathan Smith have rejoined. That was a little bit messy.
Yeah, it was. I think we cursed them. By saying we hope they'll do well. But Joel has just about survived fairly unscathed. I don't know what the damage level is like on his car, but he's still in P2. and you know he's not got major damage because he is slowly closing in on John Jones still, so the chance is there for the win still. But one person who's managed to navigate most of the chaos fairly unscathed with the help of Dave to his left is Josh Martin, who's running up in 4th. He could be on for a podium if he can get one of these 2 cars in front and hold off the faster cars behind.
Now, Dave is not eligible to win the Best Fan of the Week award, or whatever it is we've dubbed it, but if I had my way, he would get it again, because he's the only driver who got my Nicky Grist reference earlier on. He'll certainly be enjoying his view from the passenger seat. He even put down the book, so he must be enjoying this race. He sits in 4th place alongside the driver, Josh Martin, and he just had a grandstand view of a lead change, because Joel Lask has now got himself in front of John Jones, who's now defending from Jordan Taylor, who peeks around the outside. Taylor perhaps sensing a chance for a second win of the season. Lask then down the hill through the left-hander. There is Jordan Taylor. Again, his face a picture of concentration as he tries to find a way past Jones. Needs to do this quickly, I sense, Jordan, before Lask gets too far up the road.
Yeah, I think he does. I don't know what sort of raw pace Jordan has in comparison to Joel, but Joel is typically very difficult to get past and also quite consistent when he's on his day. So Jordan's, well, he's made the move already, as I've been saying how important it is for him to make the move, so that kind of nullifies that point. He's now got to chase down Joel. He's got 2 more hybrid activations than Joel to use and 1.4 seconds deficit to close down, and we'll see how long John Jones can buy Jordan some space to the cars behind. We know John is a very fierce defender, no matter what his pace level is, what the car is. He will always fight everybody, no matter who they are, as hard as he possibly can, and usually makes it incredibly difficult to get past.
Now, of the championship contenders, because we haven't really touched upon this so far, we've got Kyle Felvers 8th, we've got Jack Smith 9th, as there Josh Martin goes around the outside of John Jones, using the hybrid nicely. Jones takes an adventurous line through Paddock Hill Bend, but the next car behind him is one Oliver Gibson, who has just quietly picked his way through all of the carnage, through all of the chaos, and he's into the top 5. He could be a dark horse yet for a podium, or maybe even a race win, and that, I remember I said to him after race 1, his championship could hinge on his result in this second race. Needed to outscore Jack Smith by as much as possible to have any shot at the title going into Silverstone, and he's doing a really good job of that so far. Can he get past John Jones and chase after those podium runners? Well, he's on the hybrid heading out of Surtees, so too is John, but of course Oliver Gibson with that rear-wheel drive traction advantage as well, and we know the car works well down the straight. Pulls to the outside line, needs to be careful here, Gibson, but in a way he's got nothing to lose. Bangs into the side of Jones, he's gone through and off further back. That was Curtis and Carroll, wasn't it, exiting stage left in dramatic fashion, but Oliver Gibson round the outside. As I said there, Lewis, a driver with nothing to lose.
Yeah, well, you say nothing to lose. It still would affect him massively if he didn't come off, but it did for him. I think there was only minimal contact between him and John on the apex, just 2 into 1, but he'd already made the move fully, and luckily it didn't tap the BMW round. But that's now going to release him to catch up to Josh Martin. Are we going to see a big battle between John and Kyle Felvers behind? Because Kyle will also be wanting to move past John as quickly as possible, because he's got Jack Smith right behind him, queuing up to make a move on him as well.
Yeah, Jack Smith might well be able to, well, surely will eventually get this place from John Jones. We know he's quicker, just needs to do it cleanly, doesn't it? At the moment, Jack Smith doing a good job, given how his first lap went, to even be in the conversation for a top 5 finish, as he applies the pressures to John Jones down the hill. When I said Oliver Gibson nothing to lose, of course, he doesn't want to end up in the scenery, but in a way, it's kind of win or bust in this race. Anything other than a win or a second is probably going to leave him too far back for the championship going to Silverstone. Jack Smith, by the way, past John Jones, but you've got to take into account the drop scores too, because drop scores wise, Jack Smith's dropping 29 points, Oliver Gibson dropping 20, so the fact that Jack Smith has quite a high drop at the moment means that Jack is in an even better position really going into those final rounds at the home of British motorsports. So Smith needs to try and get the gap realistically well under 20 points if he can tonight, but Smith's recovery drive means that isn't looking like this. Has been a really good drive from Jack Smith. Really, as you'd expect, when the chips are down, Jack does have a habit, doesn't he, of coming out the other side looking pretty good.
Yeah, one thing that always impresses me about Jack is when I was watching him at Snetterton, where the BMW wasn't the quickest car, but across the season you're going to be good at some tracks and not good at others. But he was still millimeter perfect on some laps, and he'd be absolutely nailing it, and he would still be a few tenths off the pace because the car just wasn't there, and he carries a huge amount of weight due to his immense driving skill. But he was so focused on being millimeter perfect on every single lap he did in practice and every single lap throughout the races. He got unlucky with some contacts, but even when it's not going right, he's always able to drive the car to the maximum. No matter what ballast level, damage, or whatever he's got in the car, he's always on the limit. And it seems like today, he might have a very heavy car, but it likes the track, so he's got a good chance now. He's slowly closing in on Kyle Felvis. He's got 2 more hybrids to use compared to Kyle, so he's going to be closing in, and I wonder if they're both going to be closing in, because we've noticed Josh Martin is actually beginning to edge towards Jordan Taylor now.
Yeah, he is, isn't it? Josh Martin showing some of the form we remember from him in the past in front-wheel drive touring cars. Maybe a repeat of that Brands Hatch win from the last time we raced on the Grand Prix circuit a couple of seasons ago. Might be asking too much, but you never know. We're only just into the second half of this race. If you can clear Taylor, and then the race leader, Joel Lask, only a couple of seconds up the road, really. But yeah, back to Jack Smith very quickly. You're absolutely right. There's been a few times this season where I certainly have counted him out of, a good points haul from a certain race, often reverse grid races. Croft springs to mind when he was turned sideways down at Tower at one point. This race, of course, where it looked like he was in trouble on the opening lap as well, and yet just seems to be able to pick his way out of the drama and still take some good points home with him. So he's done that again tonight. Fingers crossed anyway, as long as no more drama befalls him, which it may actually. If this group ahead starts to really battle, they might then drop back into the clutches of Felvis and Smith behind, and Kyle, is not going to move out of the way for Jack Smith without a fight either. So that could be a really intriguing battle. As could this one for second place though. Josh Martin on the tail now of Jordan Taylor, both on the hybrid, and Martin looks up the inside. Taylor closed the door very late there, but they just avoid disaster.
They did. That was incredibly close to disaster. I think we've seen a couple of people having said disaster earlier on in the race at that very same point on the track. So yeah, they got away with it that time. I don't think they'll want to be doing that anymore though, because it's just inviting Oliver to get ever closer, and Oliver's still got 9 hybrids to deploy as well, which is 1 more than Josh and 3 more than Jordan Taylor. But one thing I've noticed is Joel Lask, in typical Joel Lask fashion, got to the front and has sensed an opportunity to come away with the win and has blitzed through his hybrid allocation to get the gap. He must have seen those cars closing into each other and thought, they're going to battle, now's my chance, I need to get away from this so I don't get dragged into it. And he's down to 3 hybrids left, but he's got a 2.6 second advantage, as what we've missed in the background is Jack Smith has dispatched of Kyle Felvis.
Yeah, just said Kyle isn't going to move out of the way of Jack Smith. In the end, it doesn't look like he kept Jack Smith behind him for too long, did he? So Smith caught him, immediately passed him. Means it's only 1 position now behind Oliver Gibson, who really is the highest placed of those championship frontrunners. So Jack Smith can be very happy that he's outscored basically everyone that matters in this particular race. What can Gibson do about Josh Martin, meanwhile, up the road? Well, he's not able to get alongside him this time down Pilgrim's Drop. And so second, third and fourth stay as they were. There is Gibson through Hawthorne, looking to try and get the exit, look at the inside, maybe into Westfield, but don't really want to go side by side through Westfield. Doesn't matter which side of the road you're on, going door to door through that corner kills your momentum down the hill, and it really is single file out the back here. Jordan Taylor, interestingly, using the hybrid out the back here, trying to escape from those two, perhaps sensing similar to what you were just describing with Joel Lask, that if they're about to fight, this is his one chance to try and put some distance between himself and the Vauxhall and the Beamer behind, and that is high IQ racing. I love to see it, a driver who can read the situation around them and figure out a way to turn that into their advantage.
Yeah, it's a common thing in Formula One. Recently, people say it a lot about Alonso, Verstappen and Hamilton, that they don't actually use a lot of their brain to do the driving. A lot of their mental capacity is spent thinking about the race. So you'll see, Max picked up the fact that Helmut Marko's phone was ringing on the radio. Alonso was watching Stroll's overtake on one of the giant TV screens around the track. They think about racing, and there's a clip in I think of 2020 of Sebastian Vettel organising the whole strategy for the whole Ferrari team on the team radio whilst trying to pass cars. That's the sort of level that Formula One drivers can go to, and I think it's definitely something that sim racers are constantly trying to learn from. They're trying to get to that point, because as a sim racer, you've kind of got to do all the jobs in one. You've got to be your own race engineer. You've got to do all your own data analysis with Motec and dive into the data of where you can go faster, how you can set the car up better. You've got to do everything yourself. You've got to do the strategy, the setup, all of it yourself, and then you've got to drive the car. It's a difficult skill to master, but it's really nice to see when you can tell somebody has really thought about what they're doing in a race, and you can see it pulling off, as we see Oliver Gibson going for the outside now.
This is brave, but again, he's got to go for it. He's got to try and score some points if he can. Josh Martin leaves him the space, but Gibson with a wheel in the dirt nearly loses control anyway, and that just cost him the traction he needed up the hill. Surely can't go around the outside at Druids again. No, not quite, but Oliver Gibson is giving this a valiant go, isn't he? Needs to try and break into the podium places if he can, in order to realistically keep his championship hopes alive. So down the Cooper Straight they head, into the left-hander at Surtees. And Jordan Taylor just being let off the hook a little bit now as the two drivers behind him start to do battle. Josh Martin has had 2 podium finishes so far this season, so he's not going to want to give away a third one without a fight. All 3 of them use the hybrid down Pilgrim's Drop as they continue now on their way into the closing stages of this race. Felvis, by the way, 6th, still on the tail of Jack Smith. Then it's Dalton Ayres in 7th, and Eric Axelsen in 8th position, struggling really to gain the sort of ground that his teammates been able to in this race. Nicky Taylor, though, back into the top 10 after his dramas on the opening lap, and on the tail, indeed, of that Dalton Ayres and Axelsen battle as well. Second place, though, still where it's at, really. Down the hill, they come into clearways with only a handful of laps left in this final race of the weekend at Brands Hatch. There'll be 2 rounds of the championship left at the end of this one, and really, of these 3 drivers, the driver most aware of that is the man in 4th place, Oliver Gibson. Wants the points, needs the points really, but just cannot quite find a way past Josh Martin.
Not yet. It looks like Josh seems to be bounding between closing in on Jordan and dropping back into the clutches of Oliver. It seems like at certain points of the track he's a bit quicker, and certain points he's losing a bit of time to both of them. But the one thing to note is Josh and Oliver have considerably more hybrids to use than Jordan. So Jordan's got 2 left, Josh and Oliver have 3 and 4, and Jack Smith has 5, and he is not very far away from them anymore. He's really been closing in, so I would tip Jack Smith for a fastest lap attempt towards the end, so no matter where he finishes, he's definitely going to be blitzing the hybrid. I think the fastest lap we saw pop up not too long ago was a 27 flat, I think it was, from Nicky Taylor, which is a very quick lap in itself, but we saw a 26.8, I believe it was, on the final lap from Jack Smith, with less hybrid to use than he has now. So I think Jack will be looking to get that fastest lap and probably to try and pick up the pieces of anything where he can here, because I think it's going to be tough for him to get past these 3 cars in front. He might just have to try and follow Oliver through if Oliver can make a move, which he's going to give it a go now. Josh isn't on the hybrid. He's going to go for it again into turn 1.
Yeah, looks to be outside again, but he's tried that a few times. Martin's good on the brakes there and just fends him off, but this is about to present a real quandary to Jack Smith, because he's definitely going to catch this lot before the flag. In fact, he's going to catch them before they get onto the Grand Prix loop, I think, this time around. But does he get involved? He doesn't need to get involved, really. He's scoring more than enough points as it is to take a decent points lead into the finale, but he has clearly arrived on the tail of this group with some real performance. He's looking to the inside of Gibson. Oliver Gibson, in fairness, is not really where he needs to worry. He's up the inside and Gibson lets him go. That is amazing. Oliver Gibson opened the door for Jack Smith and let him go. Well, did he? Yes, I thought he was fighting back for a second, but no, Oliver Gibson letting his teammate through, and that perhaps was the signal that Gibson has given up hope of the championship. Meanwhile, Martin to the outside of Jordan Taylor now for second place. So as soon as Gibson dropped off his tail, he was able to attack the Honda ahead, and now Jack Smith up into 4th. Is he going to go for the podium? I'm still not convinced it's worth the risk, Lewis.
Oh, he's going to be in two minds about it. The racing driver in him will definitely be saying go for it, especially seeing how much he's closed up to Josh Martin there. I don't think he's going to have enough to get 2 places, but I think he might have enough to pass Josh Martin and maybe do a bit of a fastest lap attempt here. He's on the hybrid. I think he's going to sail past before turn 1 because Josh isn't using the hybrid to defend.
No, he's not, is he? He's trying to save it for the last lap. To the outside goes Smith. We know that Martin's late on the brake. Smith needs to be careful. The outside of Paddock Hill Bend is a dangerous place to be, but again, Martin leaves him just enough space. Still, he is stuck on the outside, though, and this time Martin does wash out wide. Jack Smith back on the inside, and there is now contact. Martin is sideways. This is bringing Carl Felvers into play as well, and this is exactly what I feared from Jack Smith. He does not need to be doing this. Josh Martin is going to fight for a podium place. We know he is. He didn't do anything wrong there as far as I could see, just outbraked himself slightly into Druids, but it only takes a slight misstep from any of these drivers now, and Jack Smith's race could be in tatters. We're on the final lap now, and I suspect perhaps Jack Smith is now going to just settle for 4th position. It may have just allowed Jordan Taylor off the hook as well for 2nd. Don't forget, this is all going on about 3.5 seconds adrift of the race leader Joel Lask, who has simply disappeared up the road, having got the lead about 1/3 of the way through the race. But for 2nd place, is there another twist in the story? Down through Dingle Dell into the right-hander at Sheen Curve. Martin closing back in on Jordan Taylor, but Jack Smith I don't think is quite going to have time to close in on these two, even if he wants to. Although, got a good exit out of Sterling's actually, so hold that thought. Joel Lask, meanwhile, through Clearways, is going to come through to claim another race victory. It's only his 2nd of the season, only his 4th appearance on the podium. The LB Motorsport driver's had a difficult season, but he'll be delighted to claim a victory here at Brands Hatch. 2nd will be Taylor, 3rd for Josh Martin, so he's on the podium at least, but had a real fight on his hands there in the closing stages, whilst Jack Smith gets away with it in 4th place, I think is the best way to describe that race. That could so easily have gone wrong on a couple of occasions, but he will further extend his championship lead over his big rivals with another 4th place finish. Oliver Gibson 5th, then Carl Felvers, Elliot Dalton Ayres, Eric Axelson, Nicky Taylor and Andy Dorman to complete the top 10 after what was another thrilling round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. Right, we need a bit of time to dissect everything that happened there, I think, before we hear from our top 3 finishers. So we're going to take a very quick break and we'll have our podium interviews in just a moment's time. Well, another massively entertaining and pretty intense race here in the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship has just been concluded at Brands Hatch. We've got 2 races to go, and I feel like that was a pretty significant one on our journey towards deciding an eventual champion. It was won, though, by a driver who I think many of us predicted would be a title contender come this end of the season, but for Joel Lask, it's been a bit of an up and down journey, it must be said, over the last month or so. Joel, great to have you back on the podium, though, and your 2nd victory of the season, both of them coming at Brands Hatch as well. I think it's fair to say this is a track you like.
It is, to be fair. I must say, though, I had not done any practice until about an hour before the race, so yeah, it was a bit all over the place. And yeah, setup was just horrific for me. So yeah, 2nd race was much better. Managed to get the setup dialed in a bit more sort of towards my liking. So yeah, that was good fun.
It looked good fun. Talk to us a little bit about how you got to the front there. Obviously, you had a decent grid position, but it wasn't spectacularly good. You had some overtaking to do in the early stages there. And, those drivers who don't often get the chance to race at the front of the grid are keen to stay there, aren't they?
Yeah, I must admit there was some lap one defending. But to be honest, it was pretty clean all the way through. I think a few of them took each other out, which helped my fight a little bit. The main one was for trying to get past John, because I know what he's like with his defending, and I kind of wanted him to hold Jordan up a little bit so I could get away, and that's exactly what he did. So thank you, John.
Yeah, John definitely got his defending boots out there, didn't he? And that did help you out rather. Are you back now for the final round at Silverstone in a week's time with no championship pressure? That must be a good opportunity for you perhaps to get another race win.
Yes, I am. I've been so busy with work and things like that I've another commitments I just haven't been able to complete this championship. But yeah, I'll be there for the finals. So see me going flying for somewhere, I'm sure.
Good stuff, Joel. Well, congratulations on the race victory. Really enjoyed watching you back to your best in that race, and hopefully more of the same next time. So, Joel, congratulations.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
So Lask then getting the race victory. Second place in the end for Jordan Taylor. Not quite a second victory of the season, but he'll be happy with that, I'm sure. And he's about to catch up with Lewis Edwards.
Jordan, that looked pretty intense from the commentary box. How was it from your point of view?
It was, again, like I said a couple of weeks ago, it felt like I was in the cars scene, dodging everyone. But it was just all I'm not going to say slow because that sounds bad, but the people who finished towards the back or started at the front are very eager to keep their position, so it's much harder to pass, especially with John. I was trying to follow Joel so I could get a battle with him, but unfortunately John managed to hold me off for a bit, and then I had, I think it was Josh, Jack, and Oliver, I want to say, behind me, so I was stressing just a bit.
Yeah, I can imagine. It looked pretty action-packed. Do you think you had it covered, or were you really just praying your Honda could make it round with enough speed to stay in front?
I was, well, I knew I kind of had a bit of pace because I overtook Josh in race one and kind of kept the gap a little bit. So I knew me and him were a similar pace. It's just about the Beamers. They are ridiculously quick around here. And with me not having the time to do much testing because my GCSEs, I feel like if I did a bit more testing, I could have been up towards the front at race one. So just it is what it is, and hopefully next week I can actually have time to test, so I'm not in this position again.
Yeah, last week you got your first win, and now a second big scoring round. You got podium again today. Does that give you real confidence going into that final round at Silverstone?
Yeah, I want to get myself up the championship because I've had some highs, had some lows, as everyone does in racing. I've had some penalties that have set me back, but we'll see where I can finish. Well, after penalties, we'll see where I am in the championship. Ideally, I want to get in that top 5 spot. I don't know. Someone could get DQ'd. I don't know how it is yet, but we will see.
Well, I hope we'll be speaking to you at the end of one of the or both of the races at Silverstone. Good luck for next week, and hopefully your GCSEs are going well.
Yeah, cheers, Lewis.
That was Jordan.
Yeah, good stuff. Sorry, go on, Lewis.
So that was Jordan Taylor, and Andy is catching up with our third place driver now.
Sorry, this is what it must feel like to be Jack Oliphant, just sat there waiting for me to talk over you. I do apologise, Lewis. Yes, third place finish for Josh Martin, his third podium, I think that is, of the season, but one of your best overall nights, I think, of the season so far, really, Josh. Now, I'm not going to say that you had nothing to do with that, but I can't help but notice you had a really good night at the exact same time that you decided to bring in some extra help.
Yeah, I felt like I'd been a tad too much off the pace, so I thought I'd try something different.
Now, I have to ask, did he write his own pace notes, or did he buy them in that book that we... Oh, he actually did. There's some preparation gone into this. I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah, it's... I don't know how much details on your pace notes.
Yeah, there's a right, hairpin, right, corner, corner, straight, right. Yeah, lots of notes.
I did suggest a couple of times you might need an adjustment to Druids, the second corner. Seemed like you were maybe carrying a bit of extra speed in there a few times, Josh.
It's the extra weight of the car. Sorry, it just changes things.
He didn't put the ballast into his calculations on where I needed to brake.
No.
I see. Well, okay. It's his first time. He can learn for next time, I'm sure. Because I think you're onto something here, Josh. I really do. It's. I think this could be a winning formula. It is good to see you back on the podium, though. I think it has been a bit of a struggle for you this season. Is there anything in particular that you have struggled with more with the Astra compared to other touring cars we've seen you really excelling in the past?
I feel the main reason is qualifying's never been my strong point, and where there's such a large amount of drivers who are very close on qualifying times, I seem to end up at the back of that, the back of the fast group, and I feel I have really good race pace, but being at kind of the back of the fast group, I seem to get caught up in the of people trying to gain ground early on at the start from like the midfield, and I found I just keep getting tangled up in other people's instance. But I feel I have good pace. I've had loads of random tech problems with like DNSs and DNFs and all sorts of things.
FPS drops as well.
FPS drops.
It was like watching a slideshow.
But yeah, I felt like in today again, I had good pace. A bit frustrated with my results in race one, because I feel I could have been a bit higher. But it's tricky track to pass on this one, because you kind of end up getting stuck in the car in front's kind of momentum. But yeah, race 2 was good. Again, I'm a little bit disappointed with third, because I really feel I could have got second, but just no way past Jordan.
I love that Dave was chipping in with some more excuses for your list of racing driver excuses there. You really do make a good team, you two. Congratulations, Josh. Fantastic to have you back on the podium, and hopefully not the last we see of Josh McRae and Dave Grist this season.
Yeah, I don't want to do Chris.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
See ya.
Well done, guys. Always good entertainment, those two. That then brings our second race coverage to an end, but it's time to take a look at those all-important scores on the doors, because we're going to be heading into the championship finale in a week's time at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and this is how the points will look. Well, as I suspected, Jack Smith has managed now to extend his points advantage 25 points, he says hesitantly, up now on the rest. Now, with drop scores to take into account, that puts him in a good position, because remember I said he was dropping a 29, I think, wasn't he? So mathematically, he's on the cusp of wrapping this up nice and early. A solid first race in a week's time should be enough to absolutely guarantee it. And mathematically, I think he's done enough already, but pending penalties and perhaps changes to the running order, I'm not going to confirm that until next week. But he's certainly in a good position. Remarkably, though, through all of that, Carl Felvis and Elliot Dalton-Ayres still inseparable, 217 points apiece. And, well, if Smith does wrap the title up a week early once the results are all confirmed, we could be focusing more on the fight for second place, because Felvis and Dalton-Ayres, I think there's a bit of beef building up there, certainly based on Carl Felvis' reaction to their race 1 battle, and they're only a few points ahead of Oliver Gibson, who at least has put himself back in contention for a really good championship finish, even if the title now is out of reach. Eric Axelsen, meanwhile, will be desperately trying to hang on to 5th position so that he can go and spend some time with Rich Hayden down at the VRRC headquarters for finishing 5th in the championship, but he'll have Josh Martin equally hungry to take that prize from him, only 11 points back going into the decider. Jordan Taylor does still have a chance potentially to get into the top 5 as well. He's 7th ahead of Scott Bugner. Joel Lask up into 9th now, and Nicky Taylor is back into the top 10 in the Graves Motorsport Honda. So, interesting reading that makes for the championship table, as we will head to the next round of the series, the final round of the series at Silverstone in a week's time. Make sure you don't miss it, because that final round of the championship, even if the title is more or less won now, it's still going to produce some really good racing. With the hybrid in play, the long, fast, open spaces of Silverstone should produce some really, really good wheel-to-wheel action. Same time, same place next Wednesday night is where you need to be to see all of that action. Well, that's not all that's coming up here at the VRRC, and Lewis Edwards is going to continue his very best Jack Oliphant impression and tell us everything else that you at home can get involved in here at the VRRC.
Yep, I will. And in true Jack Oliphant style, did we announce the driver of the round?
Oh, we didn't. No, you're absolutely right. I'll let you do the honours then, Lewis.
Well, we decided that we had a look at the people that had won driver of the round, and then we looked through all that did well this evening, and we did have some input from Jack and Rich as well as to who they thought did well from a viewer point of view, and we've decided to give it to Oliver Gibson for fighting his way through the pack as much as he could, and really took away a good haul of points. But as we were saying, we've got a few things that you can get involved with. Obviously in the top left hand corner on the screen you'll see that we've just had tonight's action, and then in the bottom left we've got the finale next week on Wednesday the 14th of June. Is Jack going to have won it on penalties already, or are we going to have a fight? We will find out in a week's time. But that is not all that you can get involved with. We have the time attack, which is free to enter for absolutely everybody. It's currently in the brilliant Brabham GT2 at the Silverstone GP loop, so it might be beneficial for those participating in the Touring Car Championship to get a little bit of practice at Silverstone and just to have a good bit of fun for anybody who would like to give it a try. And then after that one has finished on the 12th of June, on the 9th of June, on the 12th, you can get involved with the Porsche GT1 at the Nürburgring. That is an absolute monster of a car, and it is one that is well worth getting a few laps in. I drove that in testing for it. Absolutely mega combination. And not on the graphics, but we are working through some ideas for the fun races. So we will have some cool new things in the works for you guys. Haven't quite finalised the details, but that will be free to enter, and anybody can enter those. So we've got Eric on the case. Rich has recently got some input from the members of the VRRC Council to try and bring forward some ideas of what cool new sim racing events we can bring to everybody at home and in the VRRC. So stay tuned for some announcements on the cool things there. And then the one last thing is the GT500 special event in Japan. We've got 4 thrilling races at Suzuka, Okayama, Twin Ring Motegi, and Sugo to come in the brilliant GT500 cars. Absolute monsters. It's basically a GT3 car with a lot more downforce and more power. It's so much fun, and we hope that you will enjoy watching the broadcast for that. If not, you'll sign up and enjoy the racing itself. And that concludes pretty much everything.
Nicely done. Who needs Jack Oliphant, hey, when we've got Lewis Edwards, who's always abreast of everything that's happening here at the VRRC. I am only joking, Jack, who I know is listening. Can't wait to have you back for the final round at Silverstone, where we will crown a champion. We may well have provisionally crowned one already, pending the final results being made. But make sure you tune in next week anyway, where we'll have all of the news on what the point standings are, and also, hopefully, 2 more very exciting races. I'm sure we will be able to deliver on that. That's all we've got time for though tonight from Brands Hatch. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in as always, and we hope to see you again next week. Thanks as well to Lewis Edwards for stepping in to the co-commentator role, as well as continuing to produce the broadcast. Really don't know how he does that. So Rich Hayden as well for running the show, and everyone else who helps to put these events together. We'll see you all again next week for the final round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship.